This tutorial will focus on the aims and objectives of a website. It follows on from the idea, which was the last tutorial, and it's the first stage in the analysis phase of web design. So in the analysis stage, the first step is our aims. Little adage here in the bottom, little quote here in the bottom: if you don't know where you're going, every road will get you nowhere. That's why it's really important to figure out what the aims of your project are right at the very beginning, because that is the cornerstone of what you're trying to achieve. In fact, what you're doing by setting your aims and objectives is you're setting your finish line, so you'll know exactly where you're going towards and when you've achieved it, or if you've achieved it. So it's really important, and it's very important to have very simple, clear aims all the way through. So if I said to you that I was creating a website for a hotel, and I said the aim was to increase occupancy by 10% and to increase revenue by 10%. So if I was to set that as my aim, would that be a good aim? Would there be anything wrong with that aim? Have a think about that. So to increase occupancy by 10% and to increase revenue by 10%. Is there anything wrong with the aim? Is it a good aim? Is it missing anything? They're the kind of questions we have to ask every time we set an aim. Is it simple? Do I understand what I'm trying to do? Okay? So with that in mind, if you don't know where you're going, every road will get you nowhere. It's really important to have a good, clear direction on what you're trying to achieve right from the very beginning, so that everybody in your group, if you're dealing with a group, will understand what you're trying to achieve and know what direction you should be going in at every stage. Otherwise, you'll spend a lot of time wandering around in the trees, not knowing exactly where you are, what you should be doing. So, as I said, we're kicking off on the analysis stage, and in this stage there are a grand total of 6 different areas. In this particular tutorial, we're going to deal with the first 2, which are aims and objectives. Now, for starters, when people think of aims and objectives, they think, well, they're the same thing. They're not the same thing. So the next question I want to ask is, what is an aim and what is an objective? So if we don't know the difference between an aim and an objective, it'll become quite difficult for us, okay? And it's a very simple definition. An aim is what you want to achieve. An objective is how you might do that, okay? So the aim is what you want to achieve, okay? And the objective is how you might do it, okay? The steps taken in order to achieve it. Now, there's a little acronym that everybody knows, and we're going to come back to this when it comes to aims, and it's SMART, okay? So make sure your aims are specific. So remember the aim I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and I said, is this a good aim or a bad aim? So the aim is to increase occupancy by 10% and to increase revenue by 10%. Is it specific? Well, it is, I guess. Is it specific enough? Maybe not, okay? Is it measurable? To increase by 10%, yes, there's a measurable element in there. To increase occupancy by 10%, to increase revenue by 10%. Yes, I can see whether I've done that or not. Is it achievable? The answer to this question is we don't know, because we don't know what the occupancy level is at this point in time. We don't know what the revenue is at this point in time. We don't know what the environment is at this point in time. We don't know whether there's a slump coming, and we're right in the middle of it, I think. But all of these things, internal and external factors, will affect its achievability, okay? Is it realistic? Again, we don't know, because of the fact that, we don't know exactly. If it could be 100% occupancy at this point in time, so therefore we can't increase occupancy unless we increase the number of rooms, etc., that we have. Is it timely? Is it time bound? Is there a time element? No, I never had a time element in there. So when I asked the question, I want to increase occupancy by 10% and revenue by 10%, and that's my aim, I never said by when. I never said by September 2022, or I never mentioned a date. Okay, so it's really important that we have a date or we have a time, whether it's in the next 2 months, whether it's short term, whether you're talking about days, weeks, minutes, hours, or whether you're talking about months, years, etc. Okay, so we've got to have those things in there. So make sure that your aims are smart. Okay, another one for smart is, S. The S can sometimes be simple. Okay, simple, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Okay, so I'm just going to change it to simple there for a second. Is my aim as simple as it could be? Well, the answer is no. I have an and in my aim. My aim was to try to increase occupancy by 10% and to try to increase revenue by 10%. Now, as it turns out, may I increase occupancy by 10% and not achieve my aim of revenue by 10%? Yes, I could put the price of rooms down, my occupancy would go up, my revenue might go down. Okay. So what I would always advise, I'd always advise to never, ever, ever put an and into an aim. Okay, because that really is in essence two aims. Okay, so split out your aims, keep them simple so that you know whether you've achieved your aim or not. Okay, the other thing I would also advise is make sure you put your aims in order of importance. Quite often we put our aims in chronological order, in the order that we think we're going to achieve them. Okay, what I would advise is to put them in order of importance. Okay, and therefore your top aim or your first aim should be the most important aim to you. So if I was to achieve both of my aims, which of them is more important to me? So maybe revenue might be more important, or maybe, maybe I might turn around and say, listen, I really need to increase my occupancy because my ancillary spend within the hotel would be quite high, and I'd be able to make way more money that way, or whatever the case. Okay, so it's up to me to figure out which one is most important to me at this point in time and to split them out. Okay, so simple rules that I just throw onto that there and make sure everybody keeps them in mind. Keep the number of aims low. You don't want 15 aims. At the end of the day, if you have so many aims, it's a sure sign that you're not sure exactly what you're trying to achieve yourself. Keep the complexity of aims low. Keep them simple. Keep them in order of importance, with the most important aim getting the most attention. Just one other thing before I click into an example there. Quite often when it comes to aims, you'll hear people say, well, keep it simple. If you can't explain it to an 8-year-old, well, then you don't understand your aims well enough. Okay, keep them so simple and unambiguous that everyone will understand exactly what you're trying to achieve. Okay, I'm going back to the Kilmainham Jail example here, and I'm going to have a look at their aims. Now, what they've done here, and you'll see this when we look at objectives in the next stage here, but they've written their aims in a grid format, and then on the right hand side, which doesn't appear there yet, you will see that they will put their objectives. So what they'll do is they'll actually turn around and say, yeah, in order to achieve this aim, I'm going to achieve these 3 objectives, or whatever the case might be. So I'm just going to have a quick look at their aims here and see whether they're, just gauge whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. For starters, with a quick glance, I can see that there's no dates, there's no percentages. None of these things are actually involved here. Okay, so again, is it measurable? Okay. Is it timely? Those things are missing. So it's not as smart as it could be. Okay, provide practical information to include background on jail's history and architecture. Okay, to me, in some cases that could actually be an objective. Okay, and interact with and among the customers. Okay, so engagement is very important, that you engage your customers. Again, because we're dealing with a website, it's hugely measurable, so you can actually put in whatever measurability you want in there. Okay, so provide booking facilities. Okay, so maybe in that case they should turn around and say, listen, I want to increase my online bookings to whatever percentage or to whatever amount by whatever month or whatever year. Okay, and then to provide a booking facility would be an objective of that. Promote special events. Okay, So some of these could be a little bit more specific, provide practical information. So in other words, that's all about providing information about your product. So it's all about you know, promotion and customer service there, I guess. So again, that could be an objective. Okay, so on to objectives. So we've saw aims are what you want to achieve. Objectives are the steps that you take in order to achieve your aims. Now, we must remember that if we have achieved, just say I have 4 aims and I have 15 objectives. If I have achieved my 15 objectives, I should also have achieved my aims, because the two of them should be going in the same direction. My advice would always be to say, listen, if you have 3 aims, if you have 3 objectives, which aims do they apply to? Okay, which ones are they associated with? So you can see that, and your objectives should always be associated with achieving your aims. Okay, because if they're not, what are they doing for you? Okay, so just keep this in mind. People remember 20% of what they read and 80% of what they see and do. So 80% of what they interact with. The web is an interactive medium. So straight away, we should be using that. We should be trying to achieve our potential through the channel that we are actually dealing with, which is the web. And we should try to make our website as interactive as possible, because the more we engage our customers, the more they will remember and the more they will actually associate, and your brand awareness will improve. Therefore, you'll be achieving hopefully aim 1 that Kilmainham Jail are trying to do. Okay, so all of these things are important. Right, let's go back to Kilmainham Jail here. Their objectives, and you can see again they're split into 4 grids, and they're split into how they might achieve their aims. So again, what I'm also going to say to you, and people quite often forget this, they always think about SMART when they're thinking about their aims, but forget about SMART when they're thinking about their objectives. Of course, your objectives should be SMART as well. Quite often you will have more objectives than you will have aims, and that's fine. Okay, you should be able to associate, should be able to understand which is an aim and which an objective. Okay, so simply, is it what you want to achieve, or is it a step to achieving that? Okay,